We'd ask that you remain on mute during the presentations, and I'm sure there's going to be at least one occasion where you'll have to tell me to unmute myself. So if you've got any questions during the event, use the chat box, which Martha's going to be monitoring throughout. This event will be recorded because we've been asked by colleagues who are unable to attend to do so. So if you don't want to be on the camera, I understand, just, you know, turn yourself off. We have a number of presenters for some agenda items, and they may ask you to turn your cameras off at these points. You'll see that Helen's already introduced new touches to what we do. So that's booking on via Eventbrite, but also the use of Mentimeter. And Helen will be adding the link, if she hasn't already done so, and the unique code to the chat box. And we'd ask you to maybe go on to menti.com, maybe on a different device that you're viewing on today, and to complete the question that we're asking. And we'll do that again at the end of the day. We've got lunch break around 12ish, and we've extended that a little bit until 20 to 1:45, but we ask that you come back a few minutes early so that we can carry on with the afternoon sessions. And we're planning to finish at 3 o'clock. So Helen, is there anything, Martha, anything that I might have forgotten there? No? Okie doke. So, okay, so let's get this party started. And I'd like to introduce firstly Hannah Sercombe, who's an occupational therapist working in and with the creative sector to address people's health and care needs. And Hannah's going to talk to us about creative health, a complementary approach. But first of all, I just want to say a very, very big thank you to Hannah. It was a conversation with Hannah that really, and the exchange and introduction to all these amazing presenters that are going to talk today, that's made this day happen. So thank you very much. Over to you, Hannah.
Well, thank you, Sharon. And right, I'm going to share, but I will pre-warn by saying I am so averse to technology, so something is likely to go wrong, but we'll give it a shot. So just let me know if something goes wrong, because I'll be on a different page. So we'll just start. Okay, right. Can you see the screen that says Creativity for Healthy Lives? Fab, okie doke. So, and if I switch around, can you still see the screen? Perfect, okie doke. So thank you, Sharon, and thank you everyone from the network for inviting me to speak today. My name's Hannah, and as I've already been introduced, I'm an occupational therapist working in and with the creative sector to address health need in innovative ways. What does that actually look like? It looks a lot like working outside of statutory services, and at the moment I'm working in a research capacity at University College London. So I will flick through to the first slide. So you might be asking yourselves, what is creative health, and why are we here today? So my talk this morning is a super speedy run through of a very complex wider picture, and although it'll be a bit of a pit stop tour, do save any questions you may have for the end, where I hope I'll have some time to address them if I can run through my notes quickly. So today we're going to hear about some really, really incredible projects which will evidence the many ways creativity can improve the perinatal period. But what I want to do in this slot is provide a bit of a foundation to creative health, so that you've all got kind of a robust understanding of the roots, as it were, of why we're here and what it is that we're talking about. So I thought we'd start first by discussing what we actually mean by creative health. Now, as you can see on the slides, I mean, questions beyond these three abound, really, but is it a way of thinking about health? Is it a creative way of addressing health need? Is it using creativity? Who knows? When we look at the definition of creative health, we see that creative health refers to creative approaches and activities which have benefit for our health and well-being. So activities could include visual and performing arts, crafts, film, literature, as well as kind of creative activities in nature, and approaches can also involve kind of creative and innovative ways to approach health and care services, so including the use of co-production, including educational resources, working with academics, and improving workforce development. So in actuality, it's kind of all of the above of those questions. Yes, it can mean having a boogie or engaging in a cultural activity such as kind of going to a local museum, but creativity and creative health extends its approach to include how kind of wider communities and systems can help or hinder health. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. The slides are very vague, but when you receive them, I'll put any of the information I've collated onto them, so you've got a bit more than just these 3 bullet points. But to provide kind of a bit of context, as I said, creative health, I'll just whiz us through some key milestones in creative health to date. So firstly, it's crucial we recognise that these creative practices, as it were, have existed for centuries. People, you may attest to this, have an intuitive understanding of how creativity impacts their health. For me, like I said, absolutely love a boogie. ABBA perks my day up any day of the week. But digging kind of deeper into that love of dancing and ABBA helps to reveal that meaning really matters when it comes to creative health. So meaningful activity and engagement is essential to human flourishing. Professionals across creativity sectors, health sectors, social sectors have actively engaged with and encouraged this approach since the dawn of time. So creativity and creative health isn't new. Now, there are many people out there who want to say that it's this really innovative and exciting idea, which it is. It's innovative and it is exciting, but it isn't new. And some of you may attest to that, but I do myself. So kind of moving on to kind of where we are now, as it were. There have been some really significant movements in the field in the last couple of decades, which have kind of opened possibilities and given creative health this platform that those of us in the industry know that it deserves. The past decade in particular has seen this increasing interest in the role for creative health in promoting health, preventing ill health, managing and treating illness across the life course. And creative health has the potential to mitigate some of the challenges that face the health, social care and wider systems that we work and exist in. Now, one of the key milestones in creative health to date, and particularly in its definition and in defining what we now know as creative health, is the all-party that I always struggle saying APPG, but the all-party parliamentary group on arts, health and wellbeing was formed back in 2014, and it kind of aimed to improve awareness of the benefits that the arts can bring to health and wellbeing. Now, they conducted a really robust inquiry into practice, into research, included all kinds of evidence, whether it was case studies or random pieces of grey literature online. And they really had this very systematic approach to it, with a view of making recommendations to improve policy and practice. And you may have seen, but there's a report that was published as a result called the Creative Health, the Arts, Health and Wellbeing Report. And as I said, it provides this really comprehensive overview of the field, documenting like thousands of studies on the arts and how they support health and wellbeing, which is amazing. And today, where are we at? So funnily enough, I actually today have completed my Masters in Arts and Sciences in Creative Health at University College London, which is a weird moment to be in. But that in and of itself was a recommendation of the report to generate accredited modules which would increase the skills of the workforce in using the arts, not just for outcome, but appreciating them in entire entities as well. And you know, we're seeing that extending into the Welsh scene. You know, University of South Wales have their Arts, Health and Wellbeing programme, and that kind of excitement is being galvanised across the country with accredited modules popping up here, there and everywhere. And we see as well in professional bodies the promotion of the understanding the arts brings, and really, as I say, kind of solidifying what we already know. But it's great nonetheless. So Creative Health in Wales, Iechyd Creadigol yng Nghymru, had to get a bit of Welsh language in there where we could. But where are we at? So Wales, as I'm sure you can again all attest, has a rich history of culture and the arts and creativity, and we see festivals celebrating this in the education system with the Eisteddfod, the Year of Eisteddfod, and as well on the kind of English language scene with the Hay Literary Festival, and there are many more examples of how we celebrate creativity. And as well as that, you know, there are systems that honour and support that engagement with creativity. And you may have seen, but there was a new report out last week which confirmed that the introduction of arts and health coordinators in all 7 health boards in Wales has improved the health and wellbeing of NHS patients, staffs, wider population, and no other equivocal report exists that demonstrates how Wales are kind of leading the way by embedding arts across health services. Now, it's time to galvanise on this excitement. Wales is leading the way, which we love. So there are a variety of support systems that can kind of support those endeavours. So there's the Welsh Arts and Health Network, Arts Council Wales, the Baring Foundation and the Mental Health Foundation all have teams working on local and national arts and health initiatives that are really, really receptive. When I was moving back to Wales, I tried to plug into as many of them as I could, and the kind of, yeah, the open arm, the embrace has been wonderful to receive, and so I'm sure you would get that same response. So how can we implement creativity? Try and whiz through these as quickly as possible. Creativity is complex and it's different to everyone, and that's what makes it incredibly wonderful. So if you want to implement creative health, you have to be curious and brave and step outside your comfort zones by connecting with individuals, by being creative yourself, and by thinking creatively. So what do they look like in practice? So now, as I said, the report that outlined the impact of arts and health coordinators demonstrated that every health lost my train of thought. Every health board in Wales now has an arts and health coordinator, and that is pretty amazing, pretty spectacular, and I'm wowed by it. So some of you may be joining us today. I really hope there is some of you out there, and if there are, please give us a wave and put in the chat what board you represent. Now I have compiled a list which will be sent out with a presentation, so you can get in touch with your local lead. You know, think creatively if it's a project idea, if it's encouraging you to think more creatively about how you address health need. These individuals are your go-to. They can help. They have experience of cross-sector working, of working in this industry for much longer than I have, and have reputations that excel them. So please get in touch with those individuals. And as I mentioned before, creating is a wonderful way of thinking creatively about health. So we all have this intuitive understanding, you know, of what works for our health and well-being, and sometimes life and challenges get in the way of us understanding what works for us and for others. So if you're someone who, like me, knows ABBA or a trip to a gallery or a museum or even big pits will make their days then brilliant. But if you're sat there thinking, oh, I'm the most uncreative person ever, I don't paint, my house looks, oh, I don't know, it's just a mess, life's a mess, oh, I'm not creative. Firstly, no. Everyone is creative beings, and we all have that little spark of magic in us that we can apply to creativity. And secondly, I really want to encourage you, I guess, to make some time to try new things. This gives us a chance to develop lived experience of the benefits creative health brings, which further informs our practice. And finally, I got there in the end. We're going to hear some incredible examples today of just how this, oh, hang on, I think I've lost my, no, I haven't, I'm on the right slide. So as I was saying, you know, we're going to hear some incredible examples of how this plays out in practice today, and those will undoubtedly inspire you in your creative health endeavours. And so I want to encourage you to think creatively and to be creative. Often creative health is viewed in these kind of project silos, when in reality the most effective way of implementing creative health is by adopting a creative approach to thinking about health. So I'll give you a really simple example before I close, but when I used to work in statutory services, I was based in the community and particularly in a community hospital. Now, I'm sure some of you can attest to this, but community hospitals aren't always the most pleasant places to be, and a lot of the people that I worked with were incredibly lethargic. Now, as an OT, in my kind of professional practice, I know that the environment matters, but often I was so swamped with KPIs and ordering equipment and all of that bureaucracy that comes with a job, that I didn't have the capacity to think about how those that environment, for example, plays into my therapeutic relationships with the individuals I was working with. And so with patients in the community hospitals, one of the ways I applied creative health, which is so easy, was that I would pack a few spare hats and gloves in my boot, and I would steal a few of the community therapy coats, and I would wrap up my the people that I was working with, and we would go and sit on the bench in the hospital garden, and we do my initial assessment there. So seeing that improvement of an individual experiencing and absorbing nature benefited me and my mood as well. Now, this example isn't a blueprint. I'm not suggesting that everyone conducts every initial assessment outside, come rain, or in Wales's case, rain. But that's where the creative thinking comes in. There's nothing more intimidating than sitting opposite a health professional with a really lukewarm cup of tea, talking about your inmost thoughts and feelings, which are really, really causing you a lot of trouble. And it's our job as professionals to put people at ease, and this should mean thinking creatively about what best might support that therapeutic relationship to improve their health and well-being that inadvertently affects us. So be curious, and just be creative, and that's where creative health starts, really. So I've put some examples of resources and literature that could kind of help you gain a bit of a foundational knowledge and understanding of creative health, and I'll attach then the list of your regional leads that I would really encourage you to get in touch with. But that's it for me. So yeah, let's go ahead and think creatively and see what the day holds.
Thank you, Hannah, very much. We've got plenty of time. We didn't need to be racing. We've got ages. So I don't know whether people have got questions. I know we said put them in the chat, but you may want to raise your hands. Is there any thoughts from that? Any questions? I just wrote, you know, it's lovely. You're talking about sparks of magic, and that we all have it in us, and it might be at this time because of everything that's happening that we don't feel that that's true, but we have, haven't we? So the key message there, Hannah, give it a go, be curious. Fantastic. Can I bring out my paints then? Can Hannah's kind, she's tried to tell me not to call it arts and craft, but I just love it because that's what I love. You know, when the children were younger, I loved the making and the doing and all of that. So yeah, I don't know. Questions for Hannah?
There's a few questions in the chat. So I can see that Esset has put in that she's the Arts and Health Coordinator at CTM UHB. So that's fab. So if you work in CTM, get in touch with Esset. I'm sure, I hope I'm not swamping you with extra work, but even just that initial connection really matters in thinking creatively. So that's fab. I can see really thought-provoking. That's really kind. Assessments in a more comfortable environment. Yeah, you know, again, I think that's probably the OT in me is thinking about the environment and how that affects an individual. But, you know, I remember a lot of the work I did in community settings was working in rural settings. And so a lot of the individuals I worked with were farmers or worked on really rural, random B&Bs and lots of obscure places in Powys. If you work in Powys, I'm sure that is a familiar caseload description to you. But you know, walking outside, if they're feeding the sheep, go out with them, have a chat. You know, that is creative health in and of itself. It's not putting people in the boxes that we're used to putting them into, because people don't exist in boxes. Health exists in these liminal spaces, and a lot of the time that's where those marginalised individuals are, and we need to be going to people. Oh yeah, the creative health strategy is fab. Thank you, Anna. Anna is also a wonderful resource in and of herself, so get in touch with Anna. Yeah, staff wellbeing. Interestingly, and I think it's probably because I've just come from London. I've just moved out of London for the time being, but UCLH in central London have some incredible staff wellbeing initiatives, and so do, is it Guy's in St Thomas, Anna? Sorry, I'm drawing you in, but I think those are the universities that kind of do some really incredible work around staff wellbeing. Yeah, yes, there we go.
It's interesting that you talk about the staff wellbeing, because on Friday when I was having a last minute like, oh my goodness, I need to understand who our points of contact are in each of the health boards, a couple of the colleagues came back and said, oh, we've got this colleague, but they're looking at creative health and well-being for staff. So is that something that's separate to the work that's happening in the, I suppose, in the, I'm going to say in the health boards, but everywhere?
I think I'd argue that it comes under creative health nonetheless. You know, the populations we work with aren't just patients, they're people in the community, they're our own parents and families sometimes, our siblings. So again, I think it fits into that, like, not categorising people into boxes. These interventions that we're going to learn about today work for a variety of reasons, and random, obscure kind of mechanisms of change that happen underneath the surface that we don't often see, but they work nonetheless. And that, what's important, I think, is listening to that intuitive desire. You know, I think even the song we were listening to at the beginning, you know, singing to babies and children is a really natural thing that we want to do. We do quite easily a lot of them, well, sometimes, and that's a great example of that kind of intuitive creativity that exists in us all, and it's just listening to that voice. And it's, you know, even I was in the supermarket the other week, and I saw one of those like colouring for wellbeing books, like, okay, I think it probably somehow fits under creative health. You know, it's not the most advanced intervention, but I went for it and I thought, oh, I fancy doing some colouring today, and I enjoyed it, and it was wonderful, and I felt better as a result. So I think it's just listening to that voice, isn't it? Yeah, nature, level of conversation makes me think. Yeah, I think nature is a massive one, actually. Sorry, I don't know if I'm going over the time now, Sharon. You cut me off if I am,
I'm watching you. No, there's plenty. You've got 10 minutes. You've got 9 minutes now. There's 9 minutes for the questions. So it's great, because I think there's all, you know, people are already thinking about it. People are already doing this. You know, you talk about the singing in Powys. That was definitely something, you know, we were thinking about. Well, I suppose they brought it in with like the baby massage, and I was likening the song earlier to the lovely songs that are sung throughout that experience. So we've got colleagues nodding, we've got Kim, Martha, that's happening, isn't it?
I think
we may not just have termed it as creative health.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, I think the pandemic, you know, Anne-Marie has put in there about walk and talks with mums, you know, I think that's forced us to do things more creatively than we've ever done before, or think out of that box. So you know, whether we meet families in the garden or in the park, or we do a walk and talk. So it's almost like those are the first steps to doing some things a bit differently for some groups of professionals. But don't let it stop there, really, I guess, isn't it? It's thinking about how we can do more of that.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, with the perinatal mental health world in not just in Wales, but we've been looking at drafts of the new standards for particularly for the mother and baby units, but again I would encourage it within the specialist teams and throughout the whole pathway, is that they're looking more at how we can incorporate green and blue spaces, so you know, and creative health, and having links and having dedicated time. So that is absolutely fantastic, and I know the teams are already starting to think about it.
That's brilliant to hear. And I think, you know, we're seeing more and more research emerging about, you know, how proximity even to green and blue spaces affects life outcome and life expectancy, and so we should be creating, you know, equitable opportunities for individuals to engage with the things that we know improve their health. You know, creative health sometimes is seen as this like really airy fairy. I think not so much today, but definitely I think in the, you know, 5-10 years ago, this really airy-fairy approach, like, oh, the arts are infiltrating health, like, oh no, we're the professionals, and this weird tension between different sectors. But actually, you know, people, like I said, don't exist in those boxes. Artists have incredible skill sets that I could possibly never include in my interventions, that I wouldn't be able to do them without artists, and it's recognizing and valuing those skills that is what really matters, and recognizing lived experience in that as well. You know, that's why I mentioned about the importance of engaging with creativity ourselves, because if we know it works for us, that's, you know, that's tangible evidence, that's objective evidence that it works, and that's just as valuable as, you know, whatever paper the BMJ have pulled out this month. And yeah, it's giving ourselves credit for that, really, I think that matters.
That's great. Absolutely good. Any other thoughts? Any other, because we've still got some time for questions. Does anybody want to share any things that they're already doing across Wales, or thinking about doing? Or otherwise we can just move on to Julia.
Oh, could I just share, Sharon, that I loved that, Hannah, and there was so much food for thought in that, and it really connected with how I feel as well. And so I just wanted to thank you.
Oh, that's really kind. I think you've touched on the most important part, right? That like creativity is in us, and these things make us feel good. Like even hearing examples of practice inspire us, and we're like, oh, I want to try that, or I want to get in touch with that, or we need to find funding for this. You know, it riles us up, even if we've not kind of had experience of applying these creative approaches. You know, it stirs something up in us, and that's, yeah, thank you for sharing. That's really wonderful to hear.
And then we've got a couple of other hands up here, haven't we? Yeah, who wants to go first? I don't know who was first. Anne-Marie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you really got me thinking, actually. You know, when I put in the chat function that I do some walk and talks, so I'm thinking about, I hold like a well-being clinic, you know, and women come in and you're sort of asking them to go to some pretty uncomfortable places sometimes. And I have some women that come in there and just volunteer everything, you know, they just verbally give me their entire life, which is great. But I also have some women that come in and find it really difficult actually to open the door and let me in. And what you're saying about the stress colouring books, I'm thinking about what kind of stuff I could just put on the table, and thinking about a contact I had with a woman in the mother and baby unit. She sat next to me and we coloured together, and she actually opened up so much more because she wasn't making eye contact. She was doing something quite mindful in just colouring, and we got to know each other on a different level. So thank you for that, because it made me think about the clinic that I hold and how I can bring that in just as an extra little bit. Do you know what I mean? The small things make the big differences, don't they?
Exactly, and that's so encouraging to hear that you've seen that evidence that creativity works. And you know, again, relating back to my own practice, but as an OT, you know, recounting someone's history is really important, because as I'm sure you all know, I mean, history, medical history, familial history, all of those things inform our decision making and our understanding of that person, because people are complex beings, and doing things like even going, you know, if you're in Blaenavon, Bryn Mawr, or go to Big Pit, you know, talking about someone else's history makes you think, oh, well, what happened in my history, you know, and that in and of itself can help us start conversations and spark them in a really unintimidating way.
Lovely, thank you. I think we've got time just for another couple of questions, and I can see some hands up. So we've got Gabrielle first, and then on to Marilyn, if that's okay.
Hello. I just wanted to share that I did like a messy play session with the mums from the perinatal health team, and they absolutely loved it. It was just really nice to get the babies involved in like loads of different sensory activities, and like it was nice to like chat as you're doing that. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that was a good one to do.
Oh, lovely, thank you, Gabrielle. And then Marilyn.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, thank you for that. Really interesting. And also, I remember just sort of being in a meeting with some colleagues quite a few years ago, I don't know, let's say 7-8 years ago, and we were talking about perhaps bringing in sort of the Let's Walk Cymru walking groups, and I can remember having quite a lot of resistance from colleagues, thinking that wasn't going to be justifiable and it wasn't going to be worthwhile. And I think it's sometimes, you know, just hearing you talk today kind of just gives us that permission to be kind of, you know, to be creative, try and gather you know, a little bit of evidence or connect with somebody from somewhere else that's doing something. And if you can, just giving something a go, because I think things like our walking groups have been a lifesaver, probably either, you know, as a group or one-to-one with families. So yeah, thank you, and yeah, let's just be brave and be creative.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and just quickly, sorry, Sharon, I'm probably
No,
going over
Hannah,
now,
go on,
but
go on.
you know, so much of creative health has come as a result, or come to almost solve a lot of the problems that we're facing, and that kind of rhetoric takes away from the value creativity brings. You know, yes, creative health is like innately non-clinical, but walking is good for our physical health and our heart. And you know, and so there are these physical associated benefits which we can measure, which unfortunately a lot of us have to measure to keep funding and to keep going. But I have linked a few really interesting kind of evaluation tools that capture arts and health in standardized ways, but are kind of just more applicable, I guess, to these non-clinical ways of working. So that might be helpful to have a look at. But yeah, walking is wonderful.
Lovely, thank you so much, Hannah. So shall we move on now to, because you know, you've inspired Julia, which is great, because Julia's our next speaker. Julia James is going to talk about Mums Matter, Mind Mums Matter. And for those working across Wales, you'll know that this group is present in some of the health boards. So Julia, I'll let you
Great.
share more.
Thank you, Sharon. Well, I'm so excited to be here because I think that this is going to be the type of a workshop where everyone talks about things that really resonate with me. And I was invited in on Wednesday last minute to do this. So someone sent me a presentation, but it feels like it would be better if I just sort of talked and pulled up the presentation, if that works for everyone. I hate death by PowerPoint anyway, but some of it is going to be useful to draw up. So for people who don't know Mind at all, I'll just give a bit of an explanation about what we do as a bit of context. And so Mind is one of the main mental health charities in England and Wales. We only cover England and Wales. And then the part of us that work in Wales, we're called Mind Cymru. So some of you might be familiar with us. We've got a really interesting organisational setup. So we've got like a federated model with like a national structure, and then local minds who are separate organisations, but we're networked with. So you might know your local mind and do referrals to them, and they actually deliver services, whereas national mind, we like create new service models. We try to influence policy. We've got a couple of national online helplines, and my particular role is essentially getting funding in to deliver programmes and to share programmes that we've got with different commissioners in the hope they will fund them and then they'll be delivered locally. So I'll bring up some slides. Let me hang on. Hopefully I've got this in my... Here we go. Sharon, I can only see you now, so can you give me a bit of a nod if you can see my slides? Okay, bro. So I'll tell you, I don't think I need to tell you about the need for perinatal mental health services, do I? But I'll just, you know, so our starting point for developing Mums Matter really was knowing 10 to 20% of mothers are affected by perinatal mental health problems. And that is just the ones really that classify as mental illness, but I suppose there's still a considerable amount of people who are in distress and struggling and need support. And there's also, obviously, it's a real challenge for fathers and partners to make that transition too. And there's a considerable issue around suicide. And so we decided that we would develop a service to provide support principally to people with sort of mild to moderate mental health problems, but also people with stronger mental health problems who could have some support as part of a wider clinical package. So the bit that I wanted to share with you is Mind is really passionate about doing a service design process that starts by figuring out what people themselves want, rather than what the clinical experts would like to defer as what they need. Not to diss that, you know, that's a very legitimate process to follow at some time, but we like to take people with lived experience of the problem that we're trying to solve and put them then at the front of designing the solution. So when we decided in 2015 that we wanted to develop support for women in the perinatal period, we started off with 5 lived experience researchers who we trained up to be researchers, and they went out and interviewed then 22 women who had experience of perinatal mental health problems, with the goal of sort of identifying what their unmet support needs were from their perspective and what we could do to fill that gap. And we also spoke to a range of health professionals and commissioners about what they felt was missing. And we wanted any solution that we came up with to have a focus on community provision rather than provision in a healthcare setting. And that led us to creating the service model, which we call Mums Matter. And essentially, I'll talk through the basics, and then if it's okay with everyone, I'll turn my screen off and just talk through. Essentially, it's a group-based psychoeducation model where we receive referrals from anyone in the perinatal pathway, but principally from health visitors and midwives. And then we do a very relaxed and relationship focused assessment with people. And the purpose of the assessment really is just for us to gather some outcome measures so that we can prove the effectiveness of the service, so that we can build a relationship with people, so that we can check that they're in the right place and what we're offering is right, they feel is right for them, and we can describe it to them. And then if they want to go ahead and be involved and go through the service, for want of a better word, where they do 6 2-hour sessions, which are every week. And they do, as part of that, they do psychoeducation, and it's like a manualized program. So we go through certain topics, which are like, you know, about dispelling myths, about being a new mum or being a second-time mum, you know, that you're going to just be really happy and on some fluffy maternal cloud, and talking about how to nurture yourself and how to manage every day in your new experience of being a mum. And critical to the model is that there are creche facilities provided so that people can focus on themselves and not just, you know, need to be child focused. And as part of it, then we've also got a sort of suite of self-help materials that people can look through in their own time. You know, things about 5 ways of well-being, mindfulness tools, things about reflectiveness that help people choose what they might want to read about, and also a bit calibrate their own experience so they can feel like what they're feeling, really like what they're feeling is normal, in terms of feeling, you know, going through a big transition and change. And we also do a session then for partners, friends and family, talking about how to support the new mum through the transition, and so that they can understand what is normal and what's normal to expect, and to be focused on supporting the mum instead of, you know, just everyone focusing on the baby's needs, the child's needs. And then, so all of that is done in a group environment. And then we invite some peer leaders in that group in session 7 and 8 to start forming an agreement with the group about ongoing peer support that they're going to have afterwards. So I'll just stop sharing a second. So that's the model in formal speak. And what we find really is, linking back to what the things that Hannah was saying earlier, and Sharon, is that, you know, it invites people into a sort of safe space where it's okay to say, I'm unhappy, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I don't know how to do things, I thought things were going to be great and I would be really happy. And just the good thing about doing that in a group setting, of course, is those people who, you know, you were talking about earlier, those people who talk and they just, you know, are willing to share and say everything, people who are a bit quieter then get to hear from other people, okay, this is normal, and people start to bond over their experience. And the quieter people, you know, they unzip their jackets a little bit and like get to say, well, I feel a bit like that too. And so whilst people are going through the, you know, the formalized material of what we talk about, like dispelling myths about motherhood, it actually creates a situation then where people are progressively being more honest and open and more vulnerable with people, so that by the time they get to the end sessions, they're really quite bonded as a group. And then people go on to be friends for a massive amount of time. You know, I know at least one group, I'm not an expert on, you know, how long every group has been friends for, but I know at least one group went on for well over a year afterwards in terms of friendship. So in terms of, I suppose, you know, the brutal cost effectiveness of a service, it's great because we're linking people with each other for their support, and they can get much more sort of time and hours of support over a long period than they could have access to a health professional doing it one-to-one. So it brings that real advantage. But also, I think a little bit, actually, this is one of my hobby horses, so excuse me on this, is sometimes when we create, because we're very much led by people with lived experience and we create the service they want, in some ways it just ends up looking like, it's a shame that we put the sort of clinical brand mental health on it, because mental health has got a bit of a stigma around it as a term, and people feel a lot of stigma for expressing those feelings. But in actual fact, we are just almost filling the gap where society has broken down a little bit, in my view. You know, there's nothing actually clinical about getting a group of mums together regularly and talking honestly about how they feel while they're going through a major transition, and talking honestly about the negative parts of it and getting to air that and getting a bit of validation and support, and to bond with other people going through the same experience. So it's a very sort of holistic, natural process, even if we talk about it as a service in mental health. So I'll just jump back to my slides. Okay, so that's that's what people do, and this is then, we map it out so that any local mind could deliver this in partnership with any local service. So we've prescribed what sort of happens in each session, and then this is what it looks like for online delivery, because obviously during COVID it was essential that we still carried this service on. People were still having children, and so we did also an online model. And anyways, to again, flipping back to talking about it in the way that you need to speak to clinicians, and obviously we had to prove the effectiveness using the sort of scientific method. And so we measured people when they entered the service and then when they finished, as in finished the actual sessions, but obviously their peer support relationships ran much longer than that. And we measured them using validated scales, so GAD-7 for anxiety, PHQ for depression, WEMWEBS for well-being, and SPS-10 for social support. And what we found were the results actually were considerable. And I've just done a snapshot here just to give you a flavour. So 79% of people who did meet the clinical threshold for depression didn't meet that threshold anymore. 72% of people who did meet the clinical threshold for anxiety didn't meet that threshold anymore. 95% of people had improved well-being, and 78% said they had improved social support, and a whole list of other benefits, which I can send you a leaflet on if you're interested in looking at it more. And if it's okay, I will read out some quotes from some of the mums. So they said, one example was, it's a great course. It really improves your confidence in your ability as a mother. And knowing that there are other mummies who have it, knowing I'm not the only one that has been suffering with it. My anxiety levels have reduced, and I learned some easy techniques to help me relax. It helped me to be part of a group and have support during a really difficult time. And here's a comment that's specific about the creche, which is central to the model. Without it, I wouldn't have been able to attend. My children have loved their time in the creche. the creche was so important and powerful for me to have a barrier and say, actually, I've got to do this for me. From the third session, I felt for the first time this huge whoosh of love of really wanting to go to him at the end of the session. The creche was really positive and an important part of it. So yeah, a great quote there about how people focusing on the needs of the mother enables them then to have the energy and the resources to give more to their child. And then we've got some quotes here from the course facilitator and health visitor referrer. Oh, and that's reminded me, there's one bit about this model I forgot to share, is when we deliver it, it's co-delivered by someone who's actually been through the course before. So we always have a volunteer from one session to help deliver the next course. And it says here, having a volunteer is an asset to the group, as it shows a mum who has done the course and who can share honestly and shows that the course works. So again, it's just that theme about opening up about negative experiences honestly, and how that actually, you know, leads you to a more positive place just by being able to share it. And then we've got a comment from a health visitor referrer from Peterborough in Cambridgeshire. So they said, I have been delighted to see the expansion in provision of Mums Matter to Peterborough and Cambridge. Health visitors have found the referral process quick and easy, with families receiving a prompt response from course coordinators. This course is filling the gap for mothers who are not confident or well enough to be accessing universal groups and activities, enabling them to understand their mental health issues, develop helpful coping strategies, and build their social networks. We have received very positive feedback from the mothers who've attended and have seen a positive impact on families. We very much hope that this service will continue to be offered and become embedded into the pathways of care for mothers with perinatal mental health needs. And so after the initial trials, oh, this is a bit of a list, I won't go through here. So I'll just say after the initial trials then, and obviously we've shown that it works, we've been able to get Mums Matter commissioned through various local minds. But one of the tricky things about being a charity is, you know, you can come up with great services, but delivery can be a bit on and off because it's dependent on there being a particular funder available to contract it at the time. And in Wales, since 2015, we've delivered it during different times in Brecon, Conway, Mid Powys, Pembrokeshire, Ystrad, Llanelli, Carmarthen, Aberystwyth, North East Wales Mind, Neath Port Talbot, Swansea, and Cwm Taf Morgannwg. And because we have, how do I get out of this now? And because we, let me stop sharing a second. Because we have got it as a sort of manualized program, and the same program is delivered wherever it goes, it delivers pretty much similar results every time, which are just sort of a credit to the benefit of sharing how you truly feel in a group of other people who open up about the same experience and provide support to each other. And in some areas it's been great because there's been a bit of a spin-off called Dads Matter, which I don't know if anyone here has encountered, where dads who went to the one session that we were doing for them on the mums course started to open up about needing some support too and finding the transition challenging, and ended up creating their own peer support group, which they call Dads Matter, and actually now which we run as a service to help people with that transition too. So gosh, that took me a lot longer than I was expecting to talk through that bit. I've got a couple of more slides, but I think if anyone's specifically interested, you know, get in touch. But just as a final point really to say that I think that, you know, it just goes to show perhaps how we might over medicalize some elements of mental health. I mean, obviously people who've got psychosis or schizophrenia, etc., are, you know, in particular need of clinical help. But there is a whole cohort of women who are just very anxious and very depressed, but don't necessarily need to have clinical support, but just need to be in a group of people, be given some techniques, and to be in a group of people where they can talk openly about their experience and go on a journey with a group of mums together, And I think that that's where Mums Matter comes in, and still gets as good a clinical outcomes as you would hope to expect from a clinical service. So, okay, I'll pause there because I want to see now there's people in. Thank you for sharing. So Martha said, we've got Mums Matter in CPM and the evaluations have been incredible. That's great to hear. And 2 services available in the health board. Yeah, so I think in terms of like, you know, its availability, being available as a referral pathway to health visitors and to midwives, especially, you know, what you were saying earlier about people who are in tune with how the mum is feeling, that's where Mums Matter is best placed. I mean, we want people to be able to access themselves as well, but then it's just a case of how do they know about it. So we would ideally like something like this linked in all health boards for as a resource for health visitors and midwives to make referrals to. Yeah, so I will pause there because I feel like I've been talking for a long time. And if anybody would like to ask any questions, or Sharon, shall I refer back to you?
Yeah, no, that's lovely. Thank you, Julia. And I think what you've done beautifully there is set the scene about why we're here and what the Wales Perinatal Mental Health Network is about, and about taking that whole pathway approach.
Yeah.
So I'm not working on a commission basis for Mind Mums Matter, but I was involved in the testing those many, many years ago. Tracy, I've forgotten how long now, in Paris, when they introduced the model into Paris. And as a health visitor myself, I can only say it was absolutely fantastic. And I hear that time and time again from colleagues where Mind Mums Matter it is now. So as you say, we've got it sporadically throughout Wales. I know a colleague's asked, Anne-Marie's asked about, you know, the difference between Pregnancy in Mind, which is NSPCC, and Mums Matter. So Mums Matter is very much about postnatal, isn't it? Whereas the Pregnancy in Mind is about in the pregnancy and antenatally.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know whether there's more any questions, any thoughts, or whether
Sorry.
Martha... Go.
Sorry, Sharon. I've
Oh,
tried for some bizarre reason. I can't get on the chat, right? And I can't raise
Julia,
a hand. I know.
Speak up now. That's
so
fine.
I'm really sorry. I've got to barge in here.
Yeah, no, carry on.
Yeah, hi, Julia. I work.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Julia too as well. I work in Swansea. And I've been trying to get Mums Matter in Swansea for quite some time now. I mean, I have got a mind worker that actually facilitates one of the groups that I run in Swansea, which is a wellbeing group, and that works really well, as you said, you know, for bringing people together. But for some reason, they just say it goes down to sort of funding and things like that. Yeah. So is there a chance that we can get it in Swansea, because there's such a great need there to bridge this gap, you know, it's needed there.
I think that, I mean, obviously Emma, who runs Swansea Local Mind, I'm sure she would love to have it there. And what I didn't share today to not, you know, make it too boring is all of the commissioning details and cost effectiveness details that we have got to support people to make a business case to commissioners about, which show, you know, the cost effectiveness, how it creates an early intervention compared to people suffering more, how it could potentially improve outcomes for children, or you know, the evidence base for maternal mental health being linked to child outcomes. And also a sort of commissioning pack, how it fits in with whatever relevant policies we need to fit in for now. So, for example, I would say this fits really well with the NEST framework, although I've never actually sat down and made that particular case in relation to Mums Matter. But as far as so I suppose that information, taking it to the health board, leads. And at the moment, I'm aware that there's a mental health service improvement fund coming through Welsh Government, which local health boards can apply to, where a certain amount of money is meant to go to the voluntary sector. So again, I'm not sure exactly what the details for the LHBs to apply, but I think that this would be a really good example to apply for as part of that. And also we've got the information to use to create a business case for it. So they would be some things to explore. I guess it's just about speaking to people at a senior level, planners and commissioners, about what funding pots it might be matched to, because in the bigger scheme of things, you know, the budgets compared to the budgets LHBs are talking about, it's actually really cheap. It's a very cost-effective intervention. So I'd be happy to share that with you if you want to put, or share it with Sharon and she can share it out with everyone what we've got, if that's of any interest.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
this is definitely about making those connections. It's about
Yeah.
recognizing the part that you're playing in the much bigger picture. So
Yeah.
each of the health boards, whatever they're calling themselves, will have early intervention or early transformation work streams. They'll have starting well, whatever it is. It's about getting perinatal into the plans. It's about getting perinatal talked about around those tables. And I know we've got a few minutes. Martha, Martha may want to share, you know, the great work that's happening in Cwmtaf, because I think, don't quote me on it, that they're leading the way in Wales around the wraparound care in our communities for women, men and their families with mild to moderate mental health difficulties.
Yeah, I was just about to put my hand up there, Sharon. It's a good timing. So part of our early years transformation programme, we identified, I guess, that we wanted to support parent-infant relationships and perinatal mental health much more than we were. So from the start of the programme, which has been in for about 2 years now, our focus was identifying across the region where the gaps were, what the workforce had, what parents wanted, and looking at our kind of population health needs. And part of the business plan until 2024, we have Mums Matter from Mind. We have the Parent Infant Foundation in to look at parent and infant relationships across the area. We've brought in Home Start, Dad's Matter programme, which is different to the one Julia's mentioned. And we're now at the moment of bringing in the NSPCC Pregnancy in Mind programme. And I think that's what we're saying, Sharon, is we've put perinatal mental health in not only the early years transformation business plan, but also our starting well kind of vision for the health board for the next 10 years. So within health and social care, we've very clearly put that on as an area that we need to improve on, so that all our kind of our working streams are working towards that. So it's very much on the agenda across the priority groups, really. And that's just supported then when we've needed funding from the early years transformation pot. But I think aside from that, I think it's gained quite a lot of interest. So Public Health Wales colleagues currently are really interested in this whole system approach to perinatal and parent-infant work. And they're considering doing an evaluation project, not just of Mums Matter individually, but all of the programmes in CTM that we've brought in really as a result of this work. So it'd be really great to see that overall piece of work done and completed. It won't be there for a while, but in the hope that it will influence funding across Wales, because we know our specialist services can only see a certain level of need, and we really need support for that mild to moderate level. And this is where our third sector colleagues come in as partners here, because they do this so well, and without them we couldn't do this work really. So yeah, so it's a really exciting piece of work, I guess, that's been happening that will hopefully inform greater funding in the future. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay, any other thoughts, questions? Otherwise, I think, Jay, I'm sure you could fill another 5 minutes, couldn't you, on your time? Is that any thoughts, questions for Julia at all? Otherwise, I can't see.
I chip in then, Sharon, if there's no questions. Just Martha was making me think that workforce challenges are such a great lever to persuading commissioners to invite us in, because where they can't fill staffing posts, we can often find practitioners who can deliver a service. So that is another opportunity to invite in people from the voluntary sector.
Okay, lovely. There's lots to think about there. I don't want to say Martha's your woman, But Julia's also offered to provide resources that may, support you in bidding or working out who you need to go to discuss that. So is that okay with everybody? We'll move on then, shall we? So can I introduce Jay Mendeville from Lullaby, who's the Lullaby Project Manager of Live Music Now. And Jay and colleagues are going to talk about music as a creative intervention in acute settings. Over to you, Jay.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, carry on then.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Good morning, everyone. What an amazing event, getting so much from this already. So I just want to say a huge thanks in advance. We're so pleased to be here today. And as you just mentioned, Sharon, we've got a great amazing set of speakers that are going to contribute and talk about their experiences with us. So yes, to say I'm the Lullaby Project Manager at Live Music Now Cymru. And that's part of the national organisation Live Music Now UK. And for anyone that's unaware, we're the leading UK social impact charity. We use the transformative power of exceptional live music to give agency and voice to those isolated through disabling barriers, and that's of any kind. So we've been operating for 45 years, and we work particularly in arts and health, in well-being, care sectors, working with adults with dementia, and we've also a specialist area working with young people with additional needs. And it's through the delivery of lullaby projects that we've been supporting families in early years in Wales, in the northeast and the northwest of England. And that's both as in-person projects and also online projects as well. So essentially what we've done, we've taken a creative engagement model called Lullaby, which was originally developed by Carnegie Hall in New York, and that's been rolled out across the globe. So that's been rolled out internationally by different organisations. We've taken that model and we've tailored it for delivery in Wales. So today you're going to hear from me about a lullaby project we delivered at Uned Gobaith this year, and that's the specialist perinatal inpatient mental health unit at Tonna Hospital, and I'm delighted to share that another lullaby project starting there tomorrow, so that's amazing. I will also cover outcomes of projects we've delivered with Flying Start teams out in the community, which have supported mums who are dealing with postnatal depression, PTSD, rural isolation, and other mental health issues. So in a bit, you're going to hear from professional violinist Haz Smith, and also we've got participants Sophie and Kirsty, who've become voluntary champions for us because they're so keen to share with you how they've benefited from the projects. But I wanted to invite, I know we'll have a Q&A session at the end, but at any point, if you can, ask a question in the chat, but put your email address as well, because if we do run out of time or low on time, I can always email you back after the session. So yeah, just to talk lullaby, it's a creative intervention which for mothers dealing with serious clinical postnatal depression has been transformative on their mental health. It's strengthened the parent-child bond, it's improved the well-being of the hospital staff and the health workers involved. And it's through a partnership with the Swansea University Health Board that mothers at Tonna Hospital with serious clinical postnatal depression, they participated in 7 live music workshops with their babies earlier this year, and they created their own unique lullabies with professional musicians, and some even sang live at an event to their friends and family, which, as you can imagine, is a huge achievement for those patients. So we've got a video clip for you just showing lullaby workshops in action. It is one of the clips from one of the community-based projects because we didn't do filming at Tonna Hospital, but it'll definitely, well, it should give you an idea of the approach that we take. Give me 2 seconds.
My name is Rochelle Turrell. This is Azaria Turrell. I wanted to take part in the Lullaby project because I've always sang to Azaria anyway. I've always sang to her, and I just thought it'd be nice to have a personalised lullaby that was just for her. So when they kind of explained to me what the Lullaby Project was, I was on board from the get-go. I love the sessions with Helen. I absolutely love them. She's known as the crazy lady. She's so energetic. She brings the life, the soul, everything. She interacts so well with all the children of different age groups and things. So yeah, she's fab, absolutely fab. I've always sang a lullaby that my granddad used to sing to me, to Azaria. So I kind of wanted to incorporate that into her personalised one. So my granddad's lullaby I used as the chorus, and then the verses then I kind of just personalised for Azaria, kind of popping in, you know, like her birth date and date of my first scan and things like that. So it's very personal to me. When I was pregnant, and I didn't know whether she was a boy or a girl at the time, I kind of had a feeling she was going to be a girl. So I always sing Granddad's song. So we just kind of just elaborated on that original one. So yeah, going into the studio, it was a little bit nerve-wracking because it's not something that, you know, I'm used to doing or I've done before. Like listening to my own voice and stuff was a little bit. But I'm glad I did it. You know, when Azaria hears it, she recognises that it's Mammy's voice. So, you know, it was a fun experience. It was fun.
Lovely. So can I invite Haz to join me now? Haz Smith.
Yes. Hello. Hi.
Hi there, Haz. Morning. So Haz, can you share with us, in regards to Tonna Hospital, some examples of how patients at the ward responded to the project? That would be great.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, for me, it was just night and day. I'd only known the participants from that moment when I got there, but hearing from the staff as well how reserved and how shy and withdrawn some of the people were, and then towards the end of the project having them actually come up and sing in front of their peers, their families, their loved ones was amazing. I'm a musician and I can't even imagine, you know, singing in front of people I find daunting for myself. They were just absolutely incredible. One of the mums was quite reserved, Kelly. She was quite shy, didn't really speak much to us, and also was quite protective over her own baby on her lap. Towards the end of the session, at the end of the whole project, she was plonking the baby on someone else's lap, saying, look after this one now, I'm going to sing. And it was just so amazing that she was able to feel confident enough to do that. As well as just things like the breathing in the babies, the mum's anxiety going into the room, they weren't really sure what to expect at first. And some of the babies had, you know, breathing difficulties and issues, which then made the mums more anxious as well. The more music we played, the more sort of singing together that we did, the babies seemed to relax, which in turn helps the mums to relax, and they're then helping the babies to relax. And I'm very relaxed in the room. Everyone's just really feeding off each other and helping to strengthen that bond then between the mum and baby, and indeed the participants and the staff then, who are more likely to speak to each other openly and honestly if they're having difficulties, you know, a trying time, then they can do that really. So yeah.
Thank you, Haz. That's lovely. And I've mentioned to everyone 7 workshops, but you know, it'd be great to hear from you about the creative process. So, you know, if you can just share with us why you think the compositional process benefited the patients.
Yes. No problem. So the compositional process was new to me when I first started doing this as well. We go in with a sort of, the first session is almost like a concert, and we're sort of introducing music into an area where there might not usually be music. For example, the conference room in Tonna Hospital. Then we have these journals that we work through together with the mums. We start off with sort of names for your baby, nicknames for your baby, favourite things about your baby, things like that. And I don't know about you, but when someone asks me what my favourite food is or what my favourite song is, like all food and song just goes out of my head completely. So having these little like writing toolkits, aids, really help to sort of come up with words that you can speak to your child. Then we move on to writing a letter to your baby, which sounds silly at first because you think, well, they're only very little, they're not going to really read it. But it's words that maybe you haven't been able to get out of your system yet. You know, it could be fears. It could be like Rochelle said in the video, the date that she was actually born and things like that. And then with that, we can choose certain lines, we can play some things, they can sing some things to us, and we can create a lullaby together. And it's just very unique to that mum and baby then. You don't have to be the world's best singer. I certainly am not in any way. But for your baby, the mum's voice is the best thing in the world. And there is nothing that compares to it. You don't need to be Mariah Carey. They just want to hear your voice. And I think that's just, again, so important, because then the baby gets used to mum's voice. They get used to singing. The hospital staff get involved as well. You know, with these sessions, they're coming in, we've got tambourines, we've got little jingle bells, and it's amazing how someone's morning can just be transformed from, you know, I've got to do my ward round, I've got to do this, and it's really stressful and hectic. And we say, you know, come sit down and play a tambourine for half an hour and write a lullaby with a mum. And it's quite a, I don't know, a lovely process that builds trust between participants and staff and us as musicians as well. It's amazing.
Brilliant, has. And actually we've had feedback, haven't we, from the hospital staff and health workers about, because they've been able to sit down and in a relaxing informal space, if you like, you know, they've got to know the mothers, they've been able to suggest other interventions, because, you know, they understand their story more. They're being asked questions that the mothers wouldn't have asked if they did a home visit, and some of the mums interpret that as an assessment, you know, where they haven't been able to get that connection with the mother, but through this live music making and enjoyment, and just seeing the health workers laugh and cheer and wave and clap and interact with their child as well. So it's just been phenomenal for that. We've had so much great feedback, haven't we, from the health workers as well.
Absolutely. It sort of makes everyone human again, and it breaks down that barrier, I think, a little bit between patient and staff, and I must be this, and you